house, making your home as paranoid as you are, which hopefully you are, because I know I am. So, who are we? I'll let Dave talk about himself and,
which I love doing.
feed his ego.
I'm Dave. I'm old. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. My fun usually includes RF stuff and hardware hacking. We both work for a company called ReliQuest. This is Jonathan. I worked with him for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan, Echavarria. I've been in InfoSec for a little bit. Yeah, certs and whatnot, whatever. My interests really are on the offensive side, right? How can we break things, but that kind of extends itself naturally into defense, and how do we help defend things as well, right? So we also run a blog at insomniacsecurity.com. It doesn't have a lot of posts, but it's good content. So a little background about what we want to talk about today, right? Everyone talks about IoT, and the first thing that they say is, oh, IoT is completely insecure. Everything is broken, whatever. The world is on fire. Well, this talk's going to talk a little more on how can we repurpose our IoT devices in order to enhance our home defense, right? Basically, I hate paying people for a subscription service. There is no reason I should ever have to pay an alarm company a monthly fee in order to defend my own home whenever I have my own devices, right? So we'll talk a little bit about security through home automation. Devices can and should be repurposed. You have a motion sensor to walk into your room and automatically turn on all your lights. Well, why can't that also work as a motion sensor for your home security, right? You have smart speakers like a Google Home or an Amazon Echo. Why can't that be an audible alarm? Normally, none of these platforms really support that kind of feature, but if you have a centralized platform to integrate all these different devices, that'd be really great. Philips has their Hue platform, Samsung has SmartThings, and then you've got the Google Home versus the Amazon Alexa in order to kind of go through that. But none of them really integrate nicely with each other. So we came across a pretty good centralized management platform. It's called Home Assistant. It's completely open source, and it's actually super easy to set up, right? You can install this, get it going in really a short amount of time. The best part with it is it really integrates with pretty much anything out there. No matter what the smart device is, no matter what your lights are running, no matter whether you're using Echo versus Google Home, all of it works with Home Assistant. The best part is that it runs on a Raspberry Pi, right? So any components you already have, all of that can be integrated. Here's just an example of the interface, right? You have your states, map, whatever. These are all the switches I have for our kitchen and whether or not the garage entry motion sensor has been triggered, the light level, the temperature of that motion sensor. And then there's some other additional customizations that you can add to the Home Assistant interface, right? In this case, I made a floor map of my own home, and each of these blue squares you can see, you can click on and it'll turn on all the lights in that room. I have the temperature readings for those rooms, and if it's orange, all of the lights are on inside of that room. So I'm going to quickly touch on the different components of our actual system. So Raspberry Pi 3, Model B, this is pretty much the centralized brain of it. About $35, an extra $10 for storage. You probably want to go a little more just so you have a good SD card. Some Philips Hue light bulbs because really nice color changing lights are super cool. And it'll be extremely useful for the alarm, which will be interesting. Obviously, there's the white ambiance ones that don't change colors, but we all like our home to look like we were living in the 70s, so we have to have the color changing ones. And then I integrate the Philips Hue motion sensors, which are about $33 sensors. Their main purpose is that they're used to turn the lights on as you enter a room, but what they don't tell you is that these are actually Zigbee motion sensors, which means they also do temperature tracking as well as light level detections, which we can use to our advantage. And then finally, the Google Home or Amazon Echo, $50 to $130 for your device. It's nice because I can quickly say, hey, Google, turn the lights on, turn the lights off. But by interacting with the REST API, I can pretty much use them as a smart speaker as well, right? And play whatever sounds I want through them. So our goal here is to kind of keep this system pretty much on the cheap. Ultimately, about $1,000. This is about what it ran to outfit our townhouse, my townhouse. About $1,000 keeps it at a pretty reasonable rate, right? 12 lights, color lights, 3 motion sensors, 2 Google Homes, and a Raspberry Pi, plus a few pushover licenses for the different devices that I have to support sending notifications. keeps it at about 955. You may want to, budget in additional costs for enhancements you want to make to the system, like, I don't know, using an alarm panel for like a Google Fire tablet, or I'm sorry, an Amazon Fire tablet to kind of be like a centralized panel. But it's really up to you. The goal is it sounds expensive and it sounds really hard to set up, but this is actually like when you get all down to the math of it, it's not too bad. So what does an ideal home security system look like? Ideally, it should be really easy to manage, right? And support remote management, which we can do through like SSH tunnels. You can make that as secure or insecure as you want to. Ultimately, it's up to you. You should be able to quickly view the status and easily manage it through your mobile device, which can be done. Home Assistants run through a browser. Everything works really nicely. It should support sending notifications. Later, we'll touch on many different ways you can send notifications using this platform, but we personally use pushover, and we use it for a wide variety of things. It should be aware of people inside the home. There's a lot of challenges with presence detection, which we'll talk about, but it should be able to differentiate between when did I come home, when did my significant other come home, or is there someone in the house that we don't know? Obviously, it should have an audible siren. If your neighbors don't know something bad is happening, then that's a problem. And finally, you should have CFO buy-in, which, let's face it, is a politically correct way of saying my wife or girlfriend or husband or whatever needs to also be willing and able to use the system. Otherwise, it's completely ineffective, right? If it's not easy for everyone in the house to use, it's not going to be used. And again, if it's too expensive, that can also be an issue. So you really have to kind of plan out and budget what works for your environment. Obviously, everything that we're doing isn't going to work for everyone's environment, but this is a really good base to start off of. So on presence detection, if we rely solely on motion detection, it's already too late, right? An intruder is already inside your home, and just having a motion sensor say, hey, someone walked in when they're not supposed to, well, they're inside your house, so what good is that? When you think about someone that's going to break into your home, what are they going to have, right? They're going to be probably carrying their cell phone. Like, not too many people are worried about their cell phones getting tracked while they're breaking into a home, because I'm breaking into a home, I'm going to be in and out in 10 minutes. Also, consider the vehicle that they use to get into your home and load whatever your valuables are into their car. There's a chance that if they change the speaker or whatever, that it has Bluetooth enabled. What kind of stuff can we do about that?
All right. So like I said, presence detection is hard, so let's go shopping. So this kind of is going to go over what we like to use for presence detection. A lot of this is based off some software I threw together with a stupid name, Breadcrumbs, which basically uses two different other pieces of software to track and keep storage of Wi-Fi probes, so you see what people are looking at or what their devices are there, and Bluetooth. The additional hardware does add a little bit of money to it. Similar to the last thing, we try to show how you can do like the bare minimum for cheap and then add on, because it's like any good hobby, you just keep buying more and more stuff. But like I said, Breadcrumbs, it sits on top of Blue Hydra, which does Bluetooth tracking, and WUD's an old project of Tim Tone's for Wi-Fi probes. And for this, what we recommend is, at bare minimum, these little TP-Link wireless adapters are fantastic. They're great for packet injection and everything else. I mean, these are great all-around things. Plus, they're pretty high power, so you can pick up stuff. And for Bluetooth and noticing people with that, you can use the RPI3's internal Bluetooth adapter if you want. So then you're looking about an extra $14, so not too bad. Better would be throwing in one of these high-powered Sena Bluetooth adapters, which I absolutely love. Plus, they're one of the rare Bluetooth adapters that have an external antenna port, so then you can jam something really big on there and detect a lot of people. Then you're up to about $69. Ideal in what we like doing is adding all that stuff, getting a Zigbee USB dongle, and then an Ubertooth 1, because that allows you to do better detection of Bluetooth devices. And then you're at about $200, give or take. And yeah, I partially feel bad, but it's Texas Instruments. You can find cheap clones on eBay that work just fine for these things. So that's a definitely cheaper way to go. Here's one thing that we do in our test environment, our office, just mostly for giggles, is you can actually get a GSM board to detect what's out there and actually just regularly poll and say, what towers do you see? So it's easy to keep track of what towers are normally in your area. So if you want to be, put on your tinfoil hat and worry about a stingray sitting outside of your house, you could probably see that pop up, but that's really just for fun. This is the basic front page interface. We use it for tracking folks actually at our office. The origination of this project was actually, for a long time, Jonathan and I's boss was a VP who was out of Canada, and we're down in Tampa, Florida. So we would just walk in one day and like, oh, you know, this guy flew from another country and he's here, and surprise us. So we wrote this to detect him and warn us when our boss would be in the office. It's kind of expanded there quite a bit, but we still do use it regularly. Like we mentioned, Pushover, if you guys haven't used it, it's a great little program. That's a little app that you get that does push text notifications, kind of like text messages. We have this send us text messages when certain people are in the office. So what it does is, like I showed, you can configure targets to track to just know when they're there. You can have it so it sends an alarm or doesn't send an alarm. You can regularly scan for what we call potential targets, where if you want to know who's in your office that maybe you want to, like, again, another coworker, you can look for devices that are asking for networks you look at, like your office Wi-Fi. It has some code that uses Wi-Fi Max to attempt to do some Bluetooth device name enumeration, the whole off by one stuff, because most SOCs and like phones, the MAC address for the Wi-Fi will be, you add one, and that'll be the MAC address for the Bluetooth, so you can usually then query it and ask for stuff. You can do a lot of local Bluetooth device monitoring, see what's online locally using Blue Hydra, like I mentioned, and then also, as we said, GSM towers are a possibility too. This is great for our use at our office of detecting when people are there that we may want to get a warning on, but for the purpose of protecting your home, this is why this information is good, and we just keep it and just keep recording it, and then that way you can go back and look at it later. Because to detect people, this was an example of actually just a chunk of time that I recorded actually at our office, and this is just some of the things we saw. Like, so if you're looking for someone, you know, we mentioned Bluetooth in a car. These are actually headsets that are used on motorcycles. This is a GPS, so that's a car possibly too. You know, then we have everyone's phones and stuff set up too. So this is good information to kind of potentially track back, because if someone's got one of these devices and you can tie that device to them, it's a little bit more evidence if someone does break into your house and steal all your stuff. On the same time, the flip side of that concept is that maybe you want the same information for your stuff, like, you know, memorize or write down whatnot, you know, the MAC address for your Nintendo. So if it gets stolen, maybe you have a better way of proving that, because everyone likes to write down serial numbers sometimes. But this is kind of, to me, a serial number that you could theoretically find, like, in the air. So I actually have taken to recording MAC addresses for all my expensive devices in case they do get stolen.
So I'll speak a little bit about what happens whenever our alarm actually gets triggered, right? We add smarts to our home, so it literally goes into a full-blown defensive mode. When the alarm kicks off, what I want to happen is that it should start moving data off-site. And the reason for that being is, let's say we're dealing with someone that's got a little bit of brainstem and they start unplugging things. I still need to know, as a defender, you know, all that information needs to go. So if I have like a third-party server that I host in like a VPS somewhere, it'd be nice if that data can ship over, which, you know, we set up. Passive collection is the moment they walk in, we're already pulling information about them. Any phones that they have, their car, we're pulling the MAC addresses off that, and like Dave said, they're basically serial numbers, right? If we monitor for the SSID probes that the intruder gives off, there's a chance that we might be able to kind of locate them later, right? And then again, any Bluetooth information, especially like device name, Mark's iPhone, okay, now I know, you know, my intruder's first name. And as far as active collection, there's a few steps we can take, right? If we integrate a Pineapple into the system and have them automatically join our network, then hey, let's kick off some port scans and really kind of gain additional awareness around our attackers. Send me an alert notification so that I know immediately when I'm home whether or not that, you know, my house suddenly started getting robbed. We should have all of the sirens and TVs turn on and start playing noises and really kind of, you know, scare the intruder out of the home. Have a really loud and annoying siren kind of go off out of every speaker. And then taking advantage of the Philips Hue, what we actually set up was every light in the house will alternate between a red and blue flash so that there's sirens going off and then the speakers are going, and it's just, you walk into the house and you see all this happening and you kind of, it kind of would scare any robber, right? Because immediately you already think that the cops are onto you. And you know that the house is armed, right? So as far as what some sample notifications look like, I mean, this is a really easy one to set up, email notifications. We're a really, really big fan of Pushover. It's about $5 per platform per user, a platform being iOS, Android, or desktop notifications. It's seriously as simple as setting up a curl message, and then this is what it ends up looking like. What we set up for pushover, you can see the YAML configuration that we have here, and we'll post all this code later. But this is what it ends up coming up on the device. Obviously, there's any standard notification you can pull down from the top and view it. And this is what it kind of looks like. But I have it set to a high priority notification, and what all that means is that even if my device is on vibrate, it's going to make a sound and it's going to notify me, and I have to hit acknowledge in order for it to stop doing that, right? And then Dave, you want to talk on the voice calls?
Another option we have in there too is if you want to put asterisks on your Raspberry Pi, you can actually have the device call out to you. I'm kind of cheap, so I didn't want to actually have to pay for a SIP service. So there's actually these guys named Simonics where you can pay a one-time $5 fee, and they'll actually act as a SIP gateway for your Google Voice account. So then you can configure it in asterisk just like any other trunk. And then we also have a script that we call, very obviously, call someone say something, where literally once you have the trunk configured in asterisk, you just run that script space and whatever you want it to say. So we actually have it like intruder detected at blah, and it will generate the audio, call you up, and as soon as it connects, it'll play the audio and then hang up on you. So that was another option we added into it. And now the demo.
So here's a demo. It's super short. It's what we took of what actually happens inside the house. It's literally like inside the front door. Oh, wait. So all the lights are flashing red and blue. The sirens are all going off. It's super annoying, and it really pisses everyone off, but that's a good thing, right? Because the whole goal is to stop the intruder. But once the intruder leaves, that doesn't necessarily stop them from stealing any valuables, right? So there's some legality things, but who really cares? Once the information's been collected, we should start cross-referencing all available information. If all we're doing is kind of collecting open source intelligence here, that's great. So going off of the Wi-Fi probes that their phones are giving off of, if you're familiar with Wiggle, it's actually just a database where everyone's collecting all the Wi-Fi probes and kind of tying that to geolocations. So if I can look at all of the probes that an intruder has, I can kind of cross-reference what venues they frequent, or hopefully even narrow down the location of their home address, right?
The one nice thing about that is a lot of ISPs, when they give you a Wi-Fi router for your house, like Verizon, Fios, Time Warner, Bright House, they have a name that's unique to the MAC address of that, so it's a unique network name. So if you get the probe off that, you can probably track them down literally to their house at that point.
Additionally, Bluetooth name information. I mean, you know, something like Mark's iPhone really gives us a lot of information and additional stuff that we can use against them. And then just traffic analysis. If they unknowingly join our network and we kind of start capturing that traffic, what type of information can we see? Is there a Facebook session? Can we collect that information? Any WhatsApp traffic? Any other unique identifiers? The goal is to just pull out as much unique information about the intruders as possible so that we can cross-reference that later. And then if there's a successful inject, let's say, you know, inject a beef browser hook into every single page that they come on, can we continuously query their current IP address information so that we can really kind of narrow down what happens when they get home and where they are? So as long as you pretty much don't go on private property and do all of the following from the street, you should be pretty good, right? So
for this part, like, let's be really honest, law enforcement officers, if you're calling them up and saying, hey, you know, my Nintendo got stolen, they're going to look into it, but they got a lot of busy work to do that's probably a little bit more hardcore than that, so you're not going to get the most attention that you may want. So our goal is, let's help them out. Like we said, ISPs often have unique SSIDs for home Wi-Fi installs, so you could potentially find that. Then you can check Wiggle to see actually if you find an SSID that matches down, or maybe you find an area where this person will be at. And if all goes great, if you happen to find a home, there's no reason you can't sit outside of that house for a second to see if any of your devices with the MAC addresses you saved are then probing from outside of their home. Maybe they've kept your Nintendo and they're repurposing it there. So the thought there is you get all this info, you wrap it up in a bow, and then you take it to law enforcement, because then at that point they, you know, you have almost all the evidence they would need. They can go through their real legal channels, get all this taken care of properly. So additional things we can do for enhancing the lockdown state if we have detected that there is an intruder in the house. Do you have a thermostat? Start turning it up. I mean, we're out of Florida, so holy crap, anything over about 80 will make someone get out of your house quickly. Do you have smart locks? If you want, you could potentially keep locking the intruder inside of the house, spam that, like keep them in there so they can't get out until you can get there or law enforcement can get there. Do you have speakers? Kind of like with the example he showed, whether it's a sound system or if it is just a Google Home or Alexa. Start playing annoying sounds, get your neighbor's attention, find out what's going on.
Or the sound of a shotgun being...
Yeah, we've joked about that. Have like a real high clarity sound of a shotgun getting racked upstairs. I always thought that'd be fun to see how that would work out.
And then like footsteps down the stairs.
Yes.
And do you have IP cameras? Like we said, get them rolling and then start pushing these off to offsite because, you know, if someone's in there stealing stuff, how do we know they're not going to steal the Raspberry Pi? This is one of Jonathan's ideas I do like. You have these little tile tracker things. We've all seen them where it's usually like you put it in your keys or something, but there's no reason you couldn't theoretically put it in your other devices. And the one nice thing about tile is it's, I want to call it crowdsourced geolocation. Basically, you can mark your tile that's registered to you as lost, and it sends us out to apps all over, and potentially, like, if you lose a tile, like my phone, maybe if it sees it later, will then message back and you know where it is. So it's sort of kind of geolocation of your stuff, possibly. So another thing that we wanted to get into is system defense, because we're setting up an automated system to detect changes in the home, and we're at an InfoSec conference, so most of these talks are about screwing with these types of systems that we're talking about. So our thought was, well, how do we detect these attacks and try to protect our evidentiary data? So one was, easy one is, someone's on your network already maybe, so, you know, why don't we have a honeypot? We're talking IoT stuff, so why not model that? A lot of the devices are really simple to do. One that was nice and simple for a footprint was, this is an Ecobee. It's the thermostat I actually have at my house. The nice thing about the Ecobee, for simplicity purposes, is once you get it configured, it does an outbound VPN connection and there's no ports open. So it's amazingly easy to configure a honeypot that works perfectly. And that's the output from my real Ecobee, and that's the fake Ecobee at the bottom, and, you know, Nmap sees it as identical. So you can get logs off that stuff if someone's on your network screwing around, maybe trying to aim at your IoT stuff. Another thing that we did was, a big fan of playing with Zigbee, and the Philips Hue stuff that Jonathan's been talking about is all Zigbee traffic floating around to turn your lights on and off and all that. We've all seen the Killer Bees toolkit or whatnot that Josh Moore did. It's great fun. So the question is, how do we detect that? Most of the recon and attack tools for Zigbee stuff, it's pretty easy to detect because it cranks up a lot of traffic. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. We already are using breadcrumbs to collect Wi-Fi probes, so our thought was, why not just start collecting Zigbee traffic too? Because in most environments, it's not going to be a ton of data, so you can do that. Dumb name, completely ripped off of Tim Tom's Woods, since I'm kind of modeling after that, and that's what I use for breadcrumbs, but literally it's just recording all the Zigbee packet metadata. It has scripts that in an X amount of interval looks to see the average of how much traffic's in your home, so then you can use that to cross-reference historical and detect deviations. Like if all of a sudden, you know, you usually see whatever 30 Zigbee packets in 5-minute time, and all of a sudden you're seeing 200, you probably have someone outside, someone like us outside screwing through Zigbee stuff. So that's a work in progress. We'll get this out on the GitHub soon. And that is it.
So yeah, that's it. If you guys have any questions, come find us afterwards. And
yep.
Yeah.
Blog and Sunac Security. There's our Twitter accounts. And thank you very much.
Thank you.